Hey guys, Deathbyphiw here. Welcome back to my channel. Sometimes we got some good takes, we got some okay takes, we got some really bad, and we got some hot takes. So I was taking a look at this on the Blizzard forums that posted the other day, and I'm thinking this is a very hot take. Let's take a look at it right here. Well, here we're seeing like Moira is the only support who does incredible damage and incredible healing. This is in the general discussion of the Blizzard forums, and Opulence posted, and no hate to this person, I honestly think this is a hot take. Go and look at Overbuff. Pick support and organize by healing than by damage. Notice something? Generally, the more damage a support does, the less healing they do, and vice versa. Moira, however, is the exception. She's at or near the top of both lists. This is completely overpowered, and something's gotta give. Moira can either retain her identity as a high damage support or a heavy healer, but not both. It's just not fair to every other support. Personally, I would reduce her heal a lot and increase her damage moderately, make her similar to Zen or Lucia. So, let me know if you agree with me or not, if this is a hot take. I don't think it's a bad take. I think it's a hot take. And by hot take, I mean, this is very, very spicy. I mean, you can argue and say Moira does put out a lot of damage and healing at the same time. But then you would evaluate the situation and say, well, why is that the case? Why is that the case? So, let's get to it. Moira, obviously we all know her biotic grasp. She needs to do damage to get her healing meter recharged. There's actually some really cool Moira tech that you could do. Some techniques like, if you just, maybe not even high elo, just know this tip at all, is not to, if you need to quickly charge your healing in the middle of a fight, not to hold down your grass, your secondary fire, but quickly tap it. Like just tap it on the mouse, tap, 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 tap. And what it does is brings that meter up extremely high, extremely quickly, as opposed to holding it down and the meter kind of goes up it still goes up quickly, but goes up gradually. So that's just a little tip there that I would say from Moira's perspective. But she needs to do damage to get her healing pool back up. If you hold down her left click, her primary healing, that meter goes out after a while, and it's not like the longest pool of healing that you have to do. Oftentimes when you're playing Moira, you have to interchange between the two. Primary fire, secondary fire. Primary fire, secondary fire. Maybe throw out a healing orb. I find myself in team fights. Oftentimes, it's crazy. It's very difficult to try and keep the resource meter up. So I'm constantly changing between that. Every now and then I'm throwing out my damage orb, but I feel like the healing orb is obviously much better. So what I'm doing when I'm playing Moira, I'm healing my team to get my ultimate as quickly as possible. And then when I'm healing my team, if I need to do damage, right, I may throw out one of my damage orbs, but I'm often using my healing orb, and I'm using my secondary fire to get my resource meter higher. So in turn, I'm doing damage to get healing. And oftentimes Moiras are played more closer to the front line because you need to have a certain range to be able to hit people with your healing. Or you're going into the back line, kind of like DPS Moira, also like the concept of like Reddit Lucio. Yeah, you could take over lobbies like crazy if you're good at it and lower elo. But the higher and higher up in elo you get, the more difficult it becomes, and you provide more benefit staying with your team. So why is this a hot take, right? They say Moira is the only support who does incredible damage and healing. Well, have you played Kiriko? Have you played Lucio? Zen, I would argue, can do incredible damage and not a great amount of healing. I agree with that part there. But Lucio does an incredible amount of healing because he's playing with the team, and he also can do an incredible amount of damage even with his damage reduction. I've played games where I have close to 10k damage and 15k heals on Lucio, and have been providing speed boost to the team to enable them, have a ton of assists, a ton of kills, and just barely any deaths, right? Enabling your team, doing damage, providing heals, providing a speed boost, and killing enemy team members. So Lucio can do that. The big difference here is the amount of skill it takes to do it on another hero. The amount of skill it takes to get the same amount of output as Moira. So this is why this is a hot take, because it's possible. You can play Kiriko at an extremely high level and get a ton of kills and be way better than Moira overall. I think Kiriko is by far, as well as Lucio, by far way better than Moira. Moira is still very good. I think Moira is probably tied in 3rd place as top supports. If you look at my support tier list, I could tag that video at the end of this, so you should go check it out. But she's tied in 3rd place with BAP. But her kit right now, the only reason it's good is because of her ability to survive. Her fade ability is up every, I think, 8 seconds. She can fade in her ultimate when she's using her coalescence. Her coalescence can do both damage and healing, as she does have high healing and high damage outputs. But the skill ceiling is much lower than that of Lucio and arguably Kiriko and even Baptiste, who are probably all within the same realm of being, you know, S and A tier supports. These other heroes have a much higher skill ceiling, right? To be really good on Lucio, to be able to know rollouts and wall riding, when to interchange between healing and speed boost, how to enable your team, and just quite frankly, aiming. I know you don't need the best aim on Lucio, but it's a lot more aim intensive on Lucio, Kiriko, or BAP than it is with Moira, right? Moira doesn't really require any aim, if at all. And she has a lot of survivability, like I said. So this take, I think, is coming from the perspective of, well, why do I always see this? Well, when you go down to lower elos, right, it's much harder for you to do what you want to do as you're learning and getting better at the game. Like, your idea is, I want to get better at the game. I want to improve myself as a player. Like all of us, we want to get better. Well, playing Lucio at a higher level requires more aiming, more strategy in what you do. Kiriko, same thing. Are you being too aggressive or not, right? Are you hitting your shots, right? That's another thing. So it requires you having to hit shots to do damage. Same thing with BAP, requires you to hit shots to do damage. Whereas Moira, you could throw hold your secondary fire biotic grasp somebody, you could throw a damage orb out, you can shoot your coalescence and do thousands of damage without having to do much aiming or have all too much strategy. Not saying there's no strategy in playing Moira. Of course, every hero has its strategy, and if you want to get good with a hero, you know, everybody would be top 500 then if they were like some Moira pro. So no hate on Moira. So keep that in mind, and that's where I think this take is coming from. It has to be a hot take because it's just somebody I'm thinking that they saw something here, and at lower elos, I've seen people in my Discord who are, you know, in silver or gold, and they're dishing out 10k damage, 15k, 20k heals on Moira. They're winning the game. Sometimes they're losing them, but that's what you can do with Moira. She has a lot of carry potential. All the other heroes do too. Like I said, BAP has a high carry potential, so does Lucio, and so does Kiriko. But in my personal opinion, I think it's a little bit easier to do that on Moira as opposed to these other heroes. The other thing I would say is, you know, try it out. Go and play Moira if you disagree with me. Learn her. Play her more often in competitive setting and see what this individual is speaking of. Yes, you would have high damage and high healing. But I will also argue, do the contrary. Look at top 500 and GM and even high masters players who are playing Kiriko, who are playing Baptiste, who are playing Lucio. They are getting usually getting close to similar numbers as far as damage and healing does. They're dishing out a ton of damage, a ton of healing, and actually providing a lot more utility to the team than what Moira does. Moira doesn't really have that utility. Her utility is her survivability. Another big thing that they did, which I said they needed to do in my Moira video that I did like a couple of months ago, and I was you know, flabbergasted at the responses saying that Moira is not broken at the time. I was right. Moira was broken. They lowered her damage by 5. And that's what I said they needed to do. right? Her damage was brought up to 65 damage per second, and based on the HP pools that were before the buff, she was now doing more damage than what she did prior in comparison. And that's what kind of made her really like basically like borderline S tier, if not S tier, with Lucio and Kiriko, is that she did so much damage and she was doing even more percentage wise compared to everyone's HP pools than before, because she got a buff. So what did I say? You need to nerf her damage by like 5. And I also said maybe add 1 more second onto her fade ability, just to make her survivability a little less there. And I argued, does she really need her fade ability in Coalescence? I personally don't think she does, but it's not a make or break kind of tool that she has in her kit. She doesn't really have much else. And I think that's probably why she has a fade in her Coalescent when she's ulting. So, but if they added a second and they took away 5 damage, it would probably balance her out a little bit more. The 5 damage, I think, is a good thing. They did do that. And you could tell that she's a little bit weaker and she's not as solid as an A pick, but I do, like I said, think she's tied with Baptiste as the 3rd best support in the game. So, do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comments below. Is Moira the only support who does incredible damage and healing? I don't think so. Do you think so? Oh, like this video, drop a comment, share this with a friend, and most of all, subscribe to my YouTube channel. It really does help me out a lot. Guys, my first 3 numbers of my birth year is 198. I'm born in the 1980s. Help this soon-to-be boomer out and make this less of a hobby and more of a lifestyle. Your support means the world to me, and I really do appreciate it. And as always, happy gaming.